The first thing I want to talk about, I guess I can go ahead and get started, is consciousness versus self-education, or education. Because education, whether it's self-educated or whether you went to the white man's schools, it's still a certain education that the white man wants you to have that he validates. So whether you obtain this education on your own or whether you go to his universities and get it, it's still education. And then it's just general education. I don't even want to just give it to the white man. Just general education, people being educated on many things. And then you have consciousness. There's a difference between being conscious and being educated. Follow me with this. There is a difference between being conscious and being educated. Education, some education, the right education, the access to the right information can help your consciousness. It can help you articulate what you are conscious of. It can help bring out your conscious, accentuate your consciousness, help you better express your consciousness. But there's a difference between education and consciousness, particularly white institutionalized education, whether self-educated or whether you learned from sitting down in one of their schools learning one of their curriculums. Why this is so important, I have to bring up Uncle Ek and the Amin-Ra squad. Many of you have heard of them in the conscious community. Uncle Ek is a black atheist, according to his self-definition, but a scholar. I think a very good scholar, a very well-studied scholar, historian, competing with some of the best that we've had, John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, Chancellor Williams, and the list goes on. I think that the Amin-Ra squad is a very scholarly team, squad, and I think that Uncle Ek is one of the premier scholars of our time, and I told him that a long time ago, that I felt that his scholarship to me surpassed Sarah Sumseti, period. But that's neither here nor there. But in dealing with Amin-Ra squad, and I have to preface all that because people think that everything I say is I'm attacking somebody, and this is not an attack. If anything, it's a friendly challenge. And I can utilize what's going on with the Amin-Ra squad and Uncle Ek to make my example of the difference between consciousness and self-education, whether through the institutions of white supremacy or just self-education through the libraries and going through the bookstores, but still somehow a white supremacy reference or validated education, scholarship, informationship. I want to give you the difference because I think it has become very confused in Harlem on 125th Street with these debates. I think it had the thin line, the distinction or the difference between being conscious and educated has been blurred, and many people are losing consciousness or forsaking their consciousness and going simply among the path of being educated. Let me use Uncle Ek and Amin-Ra squad, a good example. They're talking about the theory of evolution and us evolving from apes. And you listen to them and you hear the rhetoric of the white supremacist institutions. You hear about their biology, their molecular biology, their anthropology. You hear the Amin-Ra squad parroting a lot of information that comes directly from the institutions of white supremacy. Clearly, he is self-educated. He read a lot of books to get this information, and he studied it thoroughly, and he has the same and similar information that they have in the institutions of white supremacy, which he can validate his knowledge, and he can verify it based upon their information and their scientific study. Now, his argument is that science is older than the white man, and in anything that is true, there is some type of scientific process that can be utilized to discover or prove or be the evidence of that truth. So just because the white man has scientific information, we should not discard it or discredit that or disqualify that, because the scientific process speaks for itself according to him. This is a theory and this is how he brings the information out. A few problems with that as it relates to the conscious community. You did not become conscious to parrot the information from the white scientists, from the white man's institutions, schools, to refer to the white man, to reference the white man. You did not become conscious to be educated. You cannot confuse consciousness with education. I gotta keep repeating that. As redundant as that might sound. There's many people who are very educated, but they are not conscious. They're educated in many fields: biology, history, anthropology, different forms of science, quantum physics, astrology, astronomy, right? Chemistry, mathematics, trigonometry, algebra. They are knowledgeable and have information in a lot of areas, but they are not conscious. You can go to a university and sit down with the top professor. You can sit down with the head white man in the building, the leading scientist, the leading professor, and he is not conscious, although he has a lot of information. A lot of people that are referenced in some of these books dealing with Kemet, dealing with our history, dealing with what happened in the past, our legacy. A lot of those white scholars are not conscious, but they are educated, and educated in a process in order to unveil, to discover, and to verify information, but they are not conscious. Because if that was the case, everybody with a PhD should be considered conscious. People with multiple master's degrees should be considered conscious. You should not have to be a member or a part of the conscious community to become conscious. You should not have to be Afrocentric. You should not have to be a Pan-Africanist. You should not have to subscribe to any of these ideologies, metaphysics that deal with the conscious community. If consciousness was education. We know that consciousness is not education, but we're slipping up lately. We're slipping up, and we're falling right back into the white man's university, the white man's schools, the white man's systems, the white man's references, the white man's books, the white man's information, the white man's validation, and eventually we're going to prop the white man up his damn self and just to go ahead and spew out the information himself for the ultimate validation. Consciousness and education are two different things. You can be born conscious. You can be born with a certain type of consciousness, awareness of something that is beyond anything that you've been educated on. You can have a subtle awareness, a sense of something greater. You can have an inner attunement with something that's greater. You can sense greater truth. Know there's something more to things. Have a grasp on things beyond your education, beyond your articulation, and sometimes, like in my case, beyond the education of anybody on the planet. I'm going in. Education can only take you so far. The difference between consciousness and education is consciousness is your desire to uncover something that you know within yourself about who you are and about what's really going on in the world, what's really going on the planet. Consciousness is your insight, your foresight, connecting to your third eye. It's an awareness that you have, an awakening that happens within you that will make you thumb through and sift through a lot of information, touch on what you are essentially conscious of. There's a lot of people educated that still have to come to what you call the conscious community. Why? If you got master's degrees, you should be already conscious if consciousness was education. If consciousness was information. If consciousness was a study or a disciplinary practice of reading books and information and scholarship and debates and lectures, then that means they're conscious at Yale, they're conscious at Princeton, they're conscious at Harvard. Then why didn't you just stay in school? Why did you just go to school? Why stand out in the cold and have building sessions when you could have stayed in a warm university with the air conditioner, with the central air, the heat, the nice couches, the teachers, the cafeteria? Some of them have dorms, rooms you can sleep in. You can get grants. You can politic and connect with other people. They have events going on, lectures and dissertations, people coming in to speak, a large network of people who want to support the information or the fundamental basis of that institution. Why not just stay in school? Because if you stayed in school, then you would have to believe that education, if you stay on the path towards education, that should lead you to super consciousness. But we look at a lot of these people that are educated, and we get that old saying where they say you can be an educated fool. It's nothing worse than an educated fool. Clearly, education could not be conscious, or we are making some great mistake. We don't need this street scholarship or this side demonstration of information and intellect. What do we need it for if education is really true consciousness? For some, they have turned the conscious community into a poor man's education. That is the bastardization of the conscious community. That is the abuse and misuse of the conscious community in imitation of white supremacy, a poor imitation of white institutionalization, a poor imitation of white scholarship, a poor imitation of what the white man has set up. But some people, they go into the conscious community, they really want to get back into the mainstream education, the mainstream institutions. So they just use the conscious community to kind of work themselves up, get a little more education, get a little more information, and end up right back in the world of white supremacy academia. They never became conscious. They missed the consciousness. They never knew what that was. They never understood that phenomenon. It just went right past them, like poof, and they end up back in white academia. They end up right back under the white man because they just felt inadequate with the amount of information that they had relative to those that were educated. So they were in the conscious community based on their inadequacy, based on how much information they had and how they compare or fit up to those who are considered to be educated. So they overstudy and overcompensate in order to make themselves look smarter than those who have an education. Which actually has absolutely nothing to do with consciousness, by the way. You got people like Dr. Umar Johnson, who is in the conscious community, but got a PhD in psychology. Why would he waste his time talking to the so-called conscious community? Wouldn't all psychologists just seem to be conscious? Why would somebody with so much education need to be validated by the so-called conscious community? I'll tell you why. Because there is a consciousness in the conscious community beyond education. There's a value in the awakening of these people and the awareness of these people. The quest to know who they are truly at the essential core. There's a value there that is beyond any educated fucking fool. And them coming into the knowingness of themselves and evolving and transcending and embodying within that reality is way more important than any education. Y'all don't hear me. Some of you came into the conscious community, you say, well, you know what, now that I'm going to be more conscious, I'm going to become more educated, and, I'm going to work myself up. I'm going to work my way into this knowledge, and I'm going to grow in my understanding and develop, my vocabulary and go through these different schools of thoughts, and I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to be a know-it-all, and I'm going to have all the knowledge, and I'm going to have all the information, not realizing that the day that you became conscious, before any educational information, was the most profound moment in your goddamn life. And that truly, there will never be a more profounder moment than a moment that you became conscious. Every other moment will be the articulation, the expression, the qualification, the disqualification, confidence in that or lack of confidence in that. It'll be progress in that realization or digression or regression in that realization. It'll be you either stepping into it, tapping into it, or falling off of it. But the moment you became conscious, to even veer into the conscious community, to entertain the infinite possibility of these ideas, the moment that you did that would be the most profoundest moment and the most valuable moment or an experience that you can ever have within the so-called conscious community. The value is right there, that moment that you became conscious. A different type of I am woke up in you. Different types of visions. Past life regressions. Different types of attunements, sensitivities, empathicness. A whole nother type of self came to the forefront of consciousness. A whole another type of self began to wake up in you. And that self right there is the totality of the value of consciousness. Don't let the educated fools diminish, take away of the true value of becoming conscious and what becoming conscious is. Because they want the white man's validation. They want to end up they want the white man to say, look, I'm going to make you an honorary professor. You done read all these books and you spend so much time in the bookstores and the library. Come on, we're going to make you an honorary professor. Come on into the white man's institutions. Come on, be a teacher. Be a hip-hop teacher, a hip-hop professor. Come back into our schools. And that's what some of the Negroes want. They want to compete and be competitive and find their own way to get back into white supremacy. It's like that basketball player who wanted to play for the NBA, and it's like one of them got lucky. He played street ball so good that somebody actually watched him and said, you know what, you really should play for the NBA. And that one scout just picked him up, and he actually went from the streets to the NBA. Not impossible. And some people are looking for that in the conscious community. It's not about consciousness at all for them. It's how they can compete with the popular mainstream intelligentsia, and how they can be validated by that and be accepted by that reality. And for some other people, something more intimate happened inside of their consciousness. Something more intimate happened inside of their being. Something more profound and phenomenal happened inside of them that drove them start moving into and journeying into this newfound selfhood, this new type of awakening that they had come into, and they had the courage to begin to take steps and move into that no matter what. And they knew less of what they were moving into, but they had the courage to do it. They knew that there was something else, and that led them into the conscious community. That led them to Phil Valentine. It led them to Bobby Hemmett. It led them to John Henry Clark. It led them to Dr. Ben. It led them to Malefi Asante. It led them to Leonard Jeffries. It led them to a lot of our scholars and professors, Amos Wilson. It led them to Dale Jones. It led them to Dr. Malakazi York. The list goes on, but it was something profound that happened within their own being, but they didn't realize that that was the most profoundest moment of their existence, because every other moment, when they came into the conscious community, became a moment of consumerism. And the products that was being distributed and the lies that's being distributed in order to push the products began to cover up and cloud that innocent awakening that happened within you, and begin to cover that up and play that to the background and start telling you you don't know more than you know. And everything you've been going through been telling you how much you don't know and how much you need to study. And they're forgetting that after all you're studying and all that there is to know, that at the end of all there is to know and all there is to study is the embodiment of that which was you in that first profound moment when you woke up. I'm going in today. Bear with me. We have confused education, information, with being conscious. Let me do a mic test. 216, you hear me? 216?
White supremacy.
Was I going in and out, or did you hear me going in and out, or was it clear?
Yeah, you was clear. You good.
Okay.
You good.
Difference between consciousness and education. Don't get them confused. Education is important. Some people got a knack and a talent for education. Excellent. But consciousness is greater. The self-knowledge, the self-realization is more important than education. Because educated people quit their jobs, drop out of school. They was educated to go work for corporate America, become engineers, become scientists, work for the stock market, be in economics, be bankers. And some of them walked away from all of that to become conscious. And some of you all forsake your own consciousness because you are jealous and envious of the educated. Why become conscious? Why become conscious? Why not just go back to school? Why be on the street arguing with some Negroes about what the white man then said up in one of his universities and schools? You can't tell me you became conscious to become institutionalized by white supremacy, validated by the institutions of white supremacy on the streets. You can't tell me that that's why you became conscious. You can't tell me that you became conscious simply to get the black rendition, transliteration, or interpretation of the white man's information. You can't tell me you became conscious for that reason. Because if that was the case, there would be no reason to become conscious. You should have continued along the course of action that you was already on and just stayed in school and grew within their institutions of academia. The very idea of black consciousness itself is counter their information. Ask Leonard Jeffries and some of these professors that's been fighting that to have a black, to spread black awakening within the white man's institutions. Ask Naeem Akbar. Ask some of them and the problems and challenges that they've had trying to push this within the white man's institutions. So you mean to tell me that your whole idea of being conscious is going back to be validated by white institutions and white institutions' information and white references and their books and their stuff like that? When you go to their buildings, within their schools, they're disqualifying what you're ultimately saying? Which is why you needed a street consciousness? Which is why we needed our own DVDs and our own scholars and our own teachers, our own master teachers? That's why we needed them? Because consciously we just knew better. We didn't know how we knew better, why we knew better. But we just knew there was something better, there was something more important, something more significant to us, something that told our story versus his story. We just kind of knew that. We just kind of felt that way. And now you go to this alternative path. You go down this other journey, and now you got people standing along that journey now, pointing you back to the white man's institution. They sound better than the white man and white supremacy. They like educated field Negroes. They like field Negroes that stunt their grasp on the white man's information. That's what they have become. They like educated field Negroes. True consciousness is radical. It is revolutionary. It is counter to white man's information. It is counter to the institutions of white supremacy. It is counter to white scholars. It's counter being validated by the white man. Because today you begin to become conscious. In all due reality, that was the moment of self-validation for you. That's the moment when you begin to validate yourself and you say, you know what, there's something more to this. I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to stop until I uncover it within myself. And I'll start by listening to these lectures and listening to the information and go to those who tried to put it together, who put some time and who have meditated on it, contemplated on it, and those who have come back and reincarnated as our avatars, our teachers, our masters, our ascended beings that's come back to this planet. I'll go sit at their feet to put this back together. You didn't do that to hear no white references. You wouldn't need a black bookstore. You can go to the library and order whatever book that you want, whatever book of the white man's institutions. You can go to the library and order it for free. You can become educated in the public library, but you'll never become conscious within the public library. Consciousness is a phenomena that happens to those who begin to reject and rebel the programming of the system of white supremacy. Those who get distracted by their higher self, distracted by something within them from all the bullshit and the foolishness that's meant to have you addicted and caught up in the world of illusion. Consciousness happens to you. And you look up and see, damn, you awake. It's like getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not really knowing what time it is, but like, damn, I'm awake. Shit. That's what consciousness is like. Today they have confused consciousness with education, which is why so much debating is going on, and they end up with white references. Debating the white man stuff. Because they're confusing education with consciousness. Consciousness will take you beyond the limitations of how much education man has. Because our education is as young in America as white imperialism. But our consciousness is an eternal entity, an eternal beingness. Why did we become conscious? Why didn't we just go to school? Because it's something deep that the white man didn't have to offer us. Because everything the white man had to offer us ended up in actual limitation for us. And we were more leaning towards the unlimited aspects of ourselves. Where we couldn't just believe the bullshit. We couldn't accept the limits. We couldn't fathom. It was something awoke in us that knew that we knew that we knew that we knew. We just didn't know what we knew, and we confused not knowing what we didn't know to be a lack of education. It wasn't a lack of education. For many, a lack of patience. And for many, just the inability to say no to white supremacy consistently enough to allow that consciousness that woke up to continue to wake up and wake up even more. Difference between education and consciousness. But if you go in the conscious community today, you won't see any difference. Where people now are selling you information, selling you classes to come learn this language and learn that language and learn this. But back in the day, it was just whatever you just fall on the book. You just run into the right teacher. You just run into the right show, the right video. It wasn't about buying anything. It wasn't so structured. The institutions of white supremacy is structured. The day you wake up, it will be the most unstructured thing that has ever occurred. Self-awakening is the most radical, spontaneous thing that can ever happen to an individual. Structure comes from white supremacy. The self goes beyond all structures. man-made creations, man-made limitations of thoughts and ideologies based on the limited experiences. Your consciousness comes from the Akashic records, the real library. We cannot confuse consciousness with education. For those who are trying to do that, all you got to do is quit arguing with Negroes on the streets and just go back to school. If consciousness is just education, you're wasting your time. Unless consciousness is something else. And if it's something else, why are you constantly arguing the white man's limited educated perspective on whether it's evolution or the scientific process or scientific understanding or biology or molecules? Why are you arguing any of the white man's shit with an entire people who've got to that conversation about consciousness because they realize that there clearly must be more than that, that my very existence and my very awakening itself is evidence contrary to all the limitations of the white man, and evidence that there's clearly a lot more than the white man has understand and can ever understand, that my very existence is evidence of that. That's when you become conscious. I say it again. Stop confusing consciousness with education. You can become conscious of that I am, that I am, that I am, that I am, that I am. You can read books with I am written in it 1,000,000 times, but until you become conscious, you won't even understand what the hell that is. Just letters and words in the book. You become conscious when you look. You can have premonitions, where you can look at National Geographic videos from the Sudan and feel like, damn, I miss home. Walk the streets and you run into people and you feel like I knew you from somewhere. And I'm not talking about running game or no love line. I'm talking about you look into their eyes and it's like, damn, I know you. We've been here before. I did this before, but I can't quite put it into words or understand really. But I know at the deep essence of my level that I've been here before. I did this already, and you were there. That's consciousness. And what white man can you go that can explain it all and make it clear to you? Then it becomes your own path, your inner path to bring into fruition, to bring into manifestation, and to bring into light what you know at the fabric of the essence of your being. You know this. How do you bring this knowing out, this information out? You go beyond the knowledge and information and education that is available, the mainstream knowledge of what they tell you is possible. Well, you go beyond all that because you have a knowingness inside of you that indicates something so profound about this experience that you're having that's beyond anything that you have ever really heard, but you got a glimpse of it by those who are within the conscious community that are speaking on these different types of subject matters. You just you could tell that there's a glimpse of it there. But the major portion of it, you got to put it together yourself, and you got to have courage to step off into it, and courage to transcend and step beyond all the knowledge, which is limitation, which is no ledge, knowing the ledge that somebody has created for you. But a true phoenix doesn't have to know the ledge because it can fly beyond all of the ledges. And the bird representation of eternal life. And it's flying beyond all of the ledges of death. The ledge represents death, represents falling, represents the end, but there's no end from that which transcends the ledge by flying and going beyond the ledge and taking the knowledge beyond the ledge. The bird is so profound because it carries information from place to place. It carries insight beyond the limitations of being on the ground. That's why the bird was just so important in ancient Kemetic science. But you're going beyond the ledge, knowing that there is no ledge, and that you are essentially the infinite and eternal reality constantly remembering itself. And this is the time of your remembrance, not your education, your remembrance. And when you come into the full empowerment of your remembrance, the condition starts to change. The world we live in starts to change. Your dynamic begins to change. Because education is all objective. Consciousness is the very breath you breathe. Consciousness is the Atma, it is the self. It is mukti, it is liberation. Consciousness is that itself. Education is objective. It refers to somebody else, has something to do with somebody else, is validated by something else. Consciousness is the self. What's the difference? Consciousness and education. How do you know if somebody's just conscious? How do you know if somebody's conscious or if they're just educated? The conscious don't seek validation that much. Because they know that they know that they know that they know. The educated always got to do the checks and balances of the references of the information that they got. And they got to tell you where they got it from. They got to tell you where they got the information from. But the conscious person can't tell you where they got their self from because they have been. Since the beginning began, before the beginning began, they was there. So they can't tell you where they got that from and all the information that came with that. And that's where the I am God, calling myself God, has come from. The Alpha and Omega. The source. Let me open up the lines. I want to make this clear to everybody. Questions and comments, press 1 if you want to chime in. The difference between education and consciousness. Press 1, I'll bring you into the queue. 216.
Yeah. Black supremacy.
Black supremacy.
Okay.
Clear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. Very, very profound. My perception is, I think consciousness is not just not only just awareness, I think it's also knowing how to compare different views and knowing how to unite views together. Just like how you totally simplified the difference between being conscious and being educated. I mean, that you knew how to compare that. And that's what consciousness is knowing how to compare different schools of thought. Just like, some of us started out, we compare Christianity with Islam. We compare, Moorish information with Hebrew information. We compare Buddhism with Kemetic philosophy or whatever. We know how to compare these things, and we follow what makes sense to us. That's why people become Moors, become Hebrew, because that's what makes sense to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that, you pretty much know how to unite your thoughts, and you know how to unite everything that you know how to compare. You know how to really make sense, put it all together. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what being conscious is. And you know how to execute whatever you know. Being conscious is not just, yes, it is going beyond information. I think it's about, going beyond information. It's about experience. Because when you experience something, you see it, you're there. And so you automatically conscious of it. More than just being informed about it. What you have in the conscious community is a bunch of information junkies. Everybody just informed. But if they was really conscious, we would be on top right now. We are conscious, but we're not executing our consciousness. We just conscious, or we just informed. So we just stuck on being informed, but you have to take your information, know how to transform your information, transform. Because that's the purpose of being informed, is to transform. And I think being transformed is becoming conscious. It's becoming aware. Thing is that people are not becoming they're not transforming because they just stuck on being informed. And that's just what it is.
You're teaching. And because, a conscious person can become educated.
Mm-hmm.
But an educated person might not never become conscious through education. Education cannot make you conscious. A consciousness can become educated. A conscious person can become educated, but education does not lead to consciousness. Education just leads to more education and more information and skills and knowledge of history and facts. You follow? But consciousness is like the squirrel that can hop from one twig to another, automatically knowing that twig, that branch is gonna hold him up. He just knows that he knows. And then somebody can do the math on that for that squirrel and show him, well, this is our theory about how you're able to do that. This is because you can automatically, do the math quickly and calculate the distance and all this, and this is how you can determine what branch to hop on. And he said, that might be true, but I can't use that to teach another squirrel. You follow?
Right.
So consciousness is beyond it's beyond education, and what helped me realize that is Nat Turner Confession. He talks about, if you read Nat Turner's Confession, he talks about how conscious he was before he became educated. And he talks about how just intelligent that he was, and how this awareness that he has about who he was and what his mission was and what he was supposed to do. Okay. And he didn't get lost in, even though he became educated, he did not get sidetracked by education. Because why would somebody so articulate and so educated, if you just read the Nat Turner Confessions and just see how the words he used, you know what I'm saying, how descriptive he was, why would he waste all that good education on cutting off a cracker's head?
Right. Exactly.
One of the most literate black people. You follow? He using words now that we today that are educated got to go get a dictionary and see what is he talking about. Wow.
Right.
It's like reading.
Right.
It's like reading Kwame Ture's the book that Kwame Ture wrote. If you listen to just how Kwame Ture spoke, you know what I mean, and how articulate and just how educated he was. In Nat Turner's Confession, he condensed such a great work of information, such a great body of information. There definitely was a lot more opportunities, or a lot more Nat Turner could have done than cut off crackers' heads. But he did not. He was not distracted or gloated, nor did he gloat in his how educated that he was. His education never made him lose track of his consciousness, of what his mission is, of what he was there to do, of why he ever chose to become educated in the first place. Sometimes you just become more educated just to articulate what you already know. We get older now, and we start watching these DVDs and watching all this information, and you start realizing, dang, I've been thought about this. I'm now just thinking about what I was thinking about. Like, none of this stuff is really new to you. You sit by yourself and you kind of ponder these things in such a way. The consciousness now is just kind of becoming more articulate about it. You follow? And interfacing about it and giving more attention to it. But these tapes was playing in the background. Who really is God? What really is time? Who really am I? You follow? These tapes was playing anyway. You follow? So we already was conscious. We just wanted to articulate it, and in our articulation of it, at best, we can network with others. You follow? Or help others in their consciousness evolution by having the words and the dialogue, to interface within their reality. But in the process of doing that, some people got lost in the education. And forgot why they woke up. Forgot that, wait a minute, you woke up to quit your job. Now you awoken to create a job? You think that a person realized they're the reincarnation of Shaka Zulu to get a damn job? Do you realize you're the reincarnation of Mansa Musa, that we were kings and queens and we inherited the planet, that we are the wealthiest, most intelligent, supremest people on the planet to get a job for the white man, or to quote some fucking white reference about us? Is that what we became conscious for? Why would the mothers and fathers of the universe need to quote what a white man thought about how great that we actually are now? Yeah. It's not making any sense. So we already knew to even entertain some of these ideas, to listen to Bobby Hemming and to listen to some of these teachers and how deep they go in, Bhagwan Ra Africa, to even entertain these thoughts. Something in us was already awoke, because if you're not awoke, you don't even want to hear this. To some, it'll just sound like, oh, it's just psychobabble, or it's just that deep stuff, or you just deep, or, you know what I'm saying? You have to already be conscious to even put a lot of time into paying attention to some of these radical spiritual thoughts and ideas. These non-conformist, non-traditional perspectives and way of viewing reality. There's got to be something already awoke in you to even begin that process.
Right.
845. 845.
Hey, what's go? You hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Hey, what's going on, man? This is Black Olay, and I just wanted to chime in. And I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I think with the conscious community, or what's known as the conscious community, a lot of us haven't moved what we are conscious of into our subconscious mind. So we don't really act upon the information that we receive. And, I mean, it's just like somebody who, you know, there was maybe a gangbanger or whatever, and then he learned some information, and even though he know not to do wrong, he's still in the subconscious mind of doing wrong. So he knows not to, but his subconscious mind is still on autopilot, and he's still going the wrong way. So I feel like that's what's happening a lot of times with the conscious community. They know what they should be doing. Well, most of them do, like me, myself. But a lot of this stuff, you know, we haven't worked it into our subconscious mind. And some people, they get so conscious that they try to forget that there's a route outside of the matrix, you know, to get outside the matrix, and they just want to get lost inside the matrix, you know. So that's what they're conscious of. They're conscious of how to trick themselves from forgetting the path outside the matrix, you know. So they know exactly how to do it, but they just keep on getting more and more information, so they can be like, you know what? There's not even a route outside this matrix, you know. And they get, you know, they, you know, they forget that, you know, with all this information, man, like you just said, you know, if you really felt like we was the ancient Egyptians, you know what I'm saying, we're not going to do certain things. And, you know, my main point is that we got to get that, all this stuff that we learning, we got to put it on autopilot, just like the body. It's like certain things that's happening in the body. Well, you don't have to force it, you know, it just happen naturally. So we need to get back to our natural selves, instincts, intuition, and, you know, just let everything go on autopilot, you know.
You teaching. And I think that's what happens with consciousness, too, is that consciousness will take you beyond fear.
Right.
Education could have you keep questioning shit. You know, how many times, how many references do you fucking need to be standing here as goddamn it, Imhotep? You know what I mean? How many references that you need to be standing here, you know what I'm saying, as Seti or Tahuti or Ptah? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How many goddamn references do you need? How many conferences and how much do you have to remind yourself before you embody that and you act in that reality? Because it's education. What I'm saying with this education movement is you need validation. Consciousness is self-validation by what you do, by how what's in you manifests in your actual experiences, not by what somebody else thinks about you. You know what I'm saying? Or how what somebody feel about what you're talking about, or how you can prove something to somebody else. You know, some of Nikola Tesla's ideas and Edison's ideas, they was not able to prove to anyone. We just now coming to the realization of what some of the electrical ideas and theories they had about electricity today.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? So they had consciousness and knowledge beyond the field of education, beyond the present field of science. They went beyond it. They transcended that. And we just now catching up with it. And today, we only want to deal with what's being validated by mainstream conscious community ideas or mainstream white supremacy institutionalized ideas, as though there's nothing beyond that. And we say not the unfoldment of our consciousness is not our journey, but our attainment of education that can be validated by the limited thinkers within the construct of white supremacy.
Right. Right. I mean, everything you're saying, hitting home, it's like we want to be conscious of that which doesn't cause fear. You know what I'm saying? We want to be conscious of anything that doesn't take us outside this box, And, I mean, I was thinking today, you know what I'm saying, you got the word millionaire. And I was thinking to myself, when you break that down, you're just pretty much dealing with, your air is pretty much money. Your aura is money, the air that you breathe is money. But the thing is, when you're talking about black supremacy, you're talking about being black and conscious, you got to be a power air. You know what I'm saying? Your whole air, every time you take a breath, you breathing in power. That's what it's about. So I was breaking that down to myself today. I was like, you know what? I'd rather be a power air than a millionaire, because the money is a derivative of the power. And we just, as far as the conscious community, we going after a lot of derivatives. We're not going after the source, and only time that we seem to go after the source is when we're looking for a white reference, to their education system, to everything that they're teaching us. And at the end of the day, like you said, we want to be verified by them. We want to double check, make sure, let me cross-reference this with Einstein white guy, and, everything's going to be all right. But everything ain't going to be all right until we start breathing power with every fucking breath that we take, until everything that, that we read, it becomes autopilot, and we ain't got to question it, Even if you didn't want to use the bathroom, your body still has a process where it's like, even if you don't want to go to the bathroom, your ass going to use it. So same thing with our consciousness. It got to get like that to where even when we want to go back to the plantation, we already on that autopilot of staying the fuck away from the plantation.
Come on. You're teaching.
So, yeah, man, I just wanted to chime in on that. Appreciate you for uploading that video earlier today.
And consciousness, too, is your autopilot into your higher self.
Okay.
Is that safe to say?
Hey, that's perfect right there, man. That's perfect.
Wow.
Damn. Goddamn, so
consciousness also requires you to trust what you're experiencing and how your experiences are leading you into the unfoldment of who you are without being distracted by the programs of white supremacy.
Okay. Okay.
Because the programs of white supremacy is always teaching you inadequacy, because they're inadequate about who they are, too. That's what we don't realize. The white man has self-hate. That's why they always debating, too. You see the presidents up there debating, and no matter who wins the debate up there, America's still going to be fucked up. So what's the point? You think who wins the debate going to fix the country, but the debate is really hate. It's a hatred forum, symposium. You know what I'm saying? So this inadequacy is coming from the white man. They all debate and they don't know nothing that they know if you sit them all down in the room. And the people that enforce what is supposed to be the truth and justice are the most ignorant people in the world, which is your policy holder, your police officers and all that. They are the most ignorant people in the world. You got all these high-level scholars and these intellectuals and bankers and real estate tycoons and business and CEOs and all that and brain surgeons, Ben Carson, they're debating all of these goddamn ideas. But the way the matrix is ran and enforced is by the most ignorant among us every day. You follow?
I hear you. Is
that not a conundrum?
I hear you on that. When you sure, like you've been saying, when you sure, that's when you start building. Until we get sure, many of us, we're not going to start building. If you don't know how to lay the foundation, if you don't know how to stack the bricks right, you constantly seeking ways to learn how to build. So, I mean, we got all the ways that we need to build. We just don't trust in it. We waiting for some white carpenter to come by and, say, you know what, yeah, that's the way you do it. But that's never going to happen, because the day that we start building our own reality, that's the day that we realize that the whole reality of white supremacy is a big ass illusion, and they can't exist without us. That's why they got the prison complex. I mean, every place where they at right now, we done built it for them. We done showed them civilization. They cannot function without us. You know, even when you take a look at evolution, they wouldn't even be here without us. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't even be here without the food from the land that we on. So, I mean, I was looking at some grizzly bears and polar bears. They say that polar bears come from grizzly bears. So, I mean, even when you think about it, their physical existence wouldn't exist without us. But it's been turned around to where we feel like we can't live without them, and that we can't do nothing or build nothing without them. So, yeah, this whole discourse is based off Sarnetta, right? Off the what they're debating about evolution and everything.
Yeah, it's based on the way the whole conscious community become. I use and Ra Squad because I just hear them just quoting all, you know, what's in the white man's colleges and arguing that. And why the hell would you drop out of the white man's school to become conscious to run into some Negro who's arguing what's inside of the white man's institution? It's like if I want to go argue with the white man's theories and his references and his ideas, why don't I go do that with the white man? Why am I looking for a black conscious person to argue the white man's theories and ideas with? And really, we talk about nationalism and separatism, but we have intellectually and philosophically integrated with the white man. Because if you're using his theorems and his ideas and his references and all that, you have intellectually integrated with him. You've integrated him into your conversation. You've integrated him into the minds of your children. He has a place and an address that resides inside your goddamn mind. And he needs to be fucking evicted. You feel me?
I hear you.
Serve him a fucking eviction notice from your goddamn mind. And let's come up with something else. The Dogons didn't have no white man to reference. Huh?
Exactly.
They look at the stars and know what the fuck was going on. So why are we calling ourselves conscious and all we doing is coming with the white man's education? But from the street perspective, I couldn't afford to go to college, so now I have the poor man's version of the white man's education that I'm parading over black people who really are trying their best to think out of the box. They trying to find out what's right by the white man, and we trying to be as wrong as possible to stumble up on the antithesis of the white man's light code lockdown. You feel me?
Right.
You challenging everything that the white man has said, and you come and try to prove everything that the white man is saying. You feel me? And thinking that's knowledge and that's information. They worship the white man's halls of knowledge. And they talk about the Masons and all these, being a Mason and all that. You yourself worship the halls of the white man's knowledge and information. You know?
It's deep right there, you know? So, I mean, you know, just the last question, you know, would you feel it's safe to say that, you know, we need to develop we talk about developing spirituality, spiritual powers, but how important of a role do you think intuition and instincts is in all this, you know?
To me, that is consciousness.
Okay.
Because that led you to something. And when you mix the intuition with courage and confidence, it leads you away from the white man. Because the white man has given you social security. He's secured you constantly being codependent on him, being dependent on him. But when your intuition kick in, and then you add a little confidence with that, you're going to start straying away from the white man. And we'll come back with our own healing systems, our own cultural paradigm. You follow? Our own reality. Right. We'll start to construct it from the ancient part that lies within ourselves.
You know, now that you said that, I'm thinking like, you know, we got to build our own, I don't want to say build our own constitution, but when you look at that word, you know, just off a whim, you know, it looked like it involves intuition and consciousness when you take a look at it. You know, I don't know how that's going to be broken down, but it looked like it, you know.
That's deep.
So,
that's deep.
But I ain't going to hold the lines up.
Thank you for calling in, man.
I appreciate it.
And that video you did was excellent, man, that I loaded to the page. Keep coming with it, man. Just keep putting it out. Don't care about no views, what people think, don't even care, man. Just put it out there, man.
I got you. Black supremacy.
Black supremacy. Press 1. Any questions or comments? I'm going to open up the lines. Let's go in on this. education is not consciousness. If it was, the most educated of us would be unarguably conscious. Today, the so-called conscious community has been corrupted with white education, with white institutionalization, with Negroes that want to imitate white supremacy. They want to be validated. The white man got his university. Now I'm going to have the black-white university. I'm going to have a PowerPoint, but I'm only showing the power and the points that the white man has already made. 561.
Black supremacy.